Hi, fifth graders. This is Miss Keene. Today we are going to talk about details, evaluating details that help to lead us to our key or main idea. So today I'm only really focusing on the details. We're going to talk about two kinds of details. We have significant details and insignificant details. To know what those mean, we first need to know what the words significant and insignificant mean. So significant, important, noteworthy, deserving attention. So our significant details are the details that are important enough that lead us to our key or main idea. Okay? Well, insignificant has the prefix in, which means not. So insignificant means too small or unimportant to be worth considering. So we read them in our story, we read them in our passages, but they don't contribute. They don't go towards helping us determine our key or main idea. Okay, so we're going to talk about some significant and insignificant details today when we read the thing about Georgie. We're on chapter 15. A lot has happened up to this point. Georgie and Jeannie the meanie are now partners, which Georgie was not happy about. He went to her house and got to see a little insight into what her life is like at home. And we are now on chapter 15 when I find it. We just finished the part where he, got in that big fight with Jeannie and door slammed and left her house. So the chapter starts with this little section where the author asks us to do something. And we know that it's him talking to us because it's in a different font than the rest of the book. It says, "Time for another favor. I want you to open your mouth as wide as you can. Now grab your tongue between your thumb and pointer finger and hold on to it for a few seconds. Keep holding." I'm going to let you do that while I read this. I'm not going to do that. You notice how your fingers are getting all wet and slobbery like that. Notice how your tongue is starting to feel dry, how every time you take a breath, your tongue gets a little bit colder. You probably think that's what happens to everyone when they grab their tongue. I bet you think it's no big deal at all, that anyone can pinch their tongue like that. Well, Georgie can too. I just thought you should know that Georgie can do a bunch of stuff, same as you. Even dumb stuff like grabbing his tongue. He doesn't do it a lot, but he could if he wanted to. He wouldn't even think twice about it. You can let go of your tongue now. You might want to dry your fingers off before you turn the page, though. There have been multiple times in this book where the author has asked us to do something, and then he goes and says that Georgie can't do it. Now he's asked us to do something, and he says that Georgie can. Only point he's trying to make is that there are things that Georgie can do, just like us, and things he can't. But honestly, there are things that I can do that you probably can't, things you can do that I definitely can't. As soon as the bell rang the next morning, Mr. Myers collected their reports. Georgie looked at the red folder with the picture on the top, hat glued to the front before he handed it in. Finally over. No more Jeannie the meanie ever again. Tap, tap, tap. Georgie swiveled around. "Why don't you hand in our report before we fail already?" Jeannie asked him. After Mr. Myers had collected all the reports, he passed out pieces of paper and said that everyone who wanted to be in the play had to write down their name and the president they wanted to be. Mr. Myers said he would collect all the papers and make his decision before the end of the day. So we remember there's a play about presidents, and Georgie really would like to be George Washington, right? Georgie stared at his piece of paper long and hard, his pencil poised above it. George Washington, his brain told his hand. Write down George Washington. But the pencil wasn't moving. Jeannie poked him in the back. "Why aren't you writing anything, donkey breath?" she asked him, her head peeking over his shoulder. "You do have stage fright." Georgie quickly crumpled up his paper. "I do not," he said. "Leave me alone." Does he have stage fright? I'm not sure if I would say he has stage fright or not. I don't think I've read enough to know that or seen him in a situation. I do know that he feels he doesn't look like George Washington, so therefore he couldn't play George Washington. As everyone's pencils scratched across their papers, Georgie sat with his chin in his hands, his empty piece of paper scrunched into a ball, and watched Andy chew on his pencil at the front of the room. He wondered where Andy would move to in the summer. Would his family find a bigger house in the same neighborhood, or would it be far away? Would Andy switch schools? Georgie wished he could just ask him. By the time the class came back from lunch, Mr. Myers had posted the cast of characters for the play. Everyone raced to the wall to read it. Georgie knew he probably shouldn't even look, but he was dying to see who would play George Washington. Finally, he wiggled his way to the front of the crowd. Russ Wilkins. Of course. Russ Wilkins was going to be George Washington. Well, at least he wouldn't have to powder his hair. George was turning to go back to his seat when something caught his eye. His name was on the list too, right next to Abraham Lincoln. There had to be some mistake. Georgie pushed his way through his classmates and rushed to Mr. Myers' desk. "Mr. Myers," Georgie said, trying not to appear frantic. "Why did you put me down for Abraham Lincoln?" Mr. Myers set down a stack of papers. "Because you signed up for it," he replied. But, Georgie stammered. "No, I didn't. I don't want—" "You know, Georgie," Mr. Myers began, gesturing with his pencil, "there are a lot of kids who wanted that part, but I was so happy when I saw your name. I think this will be really good for you. And I have to say, from what I read of your report at lunch, it seemed really inspired. I know you'll make a fantastic president." "But, You can't back out now, Georgie. I'll be so disappointed." Georgie shuffled back to his seat. Abraham Lincoln, the tallest president ever. How could Georgie possibly get up in front of a huge room full of people and pretend to be tall? He'd be laughed right off the stage. Jeannie the Meanie caught Georgie's eye just before he slipped into his seat. She smiled, looking meaner than ever. "Guess it's a good thing you don't have stage fright, huh?" she said. Georgie was going to kill her. Georgie's going to kill her because he's decided what? Who do we think put Georgie's name down for Abraham Lincoln? Jeannie the Meanie. Something to think about as we keep reading is why. Why would she put his name down? Why would she volunteer him for that? Because so far from what I read, I wouldn't say they're friends, so it comes off as being something that she might do to him to be kind of mean, right? Now let's talk about our details. There are lots of things that happened. One, they turned in their report. Two, Georgie really thought about signing up for George Washington, really wanted to play that part, decided not to. Then they got the list. Russ got the part of George Washington. Georgie got the part of Abraham Lincoln that he didn't volunteer for, and he couldn't get out of it. So through all our details, what would be some significant and insignificant details? I'd say it's very significant that Georgie now has the part of Abraham Lincoln. But does it really matter that they turned in their report? Does it really matter even at this point that Jeannie the Meanie is the one who signed him up? Right now, I think Georgie has to focus on the fact that Georgie has the part. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I hope you're enjoying this book. I really like it, and I think you're going to enjoy it even more. I hope I get another chance to read it to you. Bye.